I would like to put this question to our dear guest, Loren Graham. Professor, you have studied an enormous amount of material on Russian history. And the title of your book, the very title, carries this question: can Russia compete? This question is at the heart of every one of us here present and in the country. It would be very interesting for us to hear your opinion about the answer to this question.
Honored to be here, and I appreciate the invitation to participate in this conference. I'd like to start out by asking a very bold and challenging question. Why does Russia not adequately benefit from the genius of its scientists and engineers? I want to briefly explore this question and give some tentative answers. But first, I wish to note that the definition of the topic of this session given by its organizers, in that definition of the topic I was sent, the following sentence is featured, quote, "The schism has been growing between the companies and the nations that have and have not reaped the fruit of the fourth industrial revolution." The reality is that Russia is one of those countries that definitely has not reaped the fruit of the fourth industrial revolution. Little Switzerland each year exports much more high technology products than Russia in dollar terms. The last time I checked, 3 to 4 times as much as Russia. Why? Why, with Russia, with its very large and very creative scientific and technical establishment, why does Russia do so poorly in benefiting economically from the products of that research? A key to answering this question, in my opinion, is seeing the difference between invention, изобретение, and innovation, innovaция. There's a difference. To invent something means that you have something on your laboratory bench that works and does something that's never been done before, or you have a process in your computer that works and does something that never has been done before. Congratulations, if you've done that, you're an inventor. However, to be an innovator means a lot more. It means taking that product or process and making a commercial success of it that benefits not only you, the person who did it, but the society in which you live. And the contradictory and strange fact is that Russians are excellent inventors and very poor innovators. Let me give you some examples. Russia received 2 Nobel Prizes for the invention of the laser. But today, there is no Russian company that is significant in the international laser market. Russians built working electric lights before Thomas Edison. In fact, Edison got the idea of such a light from a Russian, a man named Yablachkov. But Edison's companies then took over the market, and there were no competing Russian companies. Russians transmitted radio waves, Popov, transmitted radio waves before Marconi. But today, Russia is not significant in the international radio electronics market. Russians put the first artificial satellite into orbit, but today they have less than 1% of the international satellite telecommunications market. Russians built the first electronic digital computer in Europe. Sergei Lebedev built the first electronic digital computer in Europe. But who buys Russian computers today? And here's another example that is very little known. The petroleum industry in recent years has been revolutionized by hydraulic fracturing. We call it fracking. Almost no one remembers that Russians invented that process. I can show you journal articles in the early 1950s where Russians completely sketched out the fracking process, and yet they did nothing with it. And this list could go on and on. Why? And there's a tremendously important question here. Why are Russians so good in the development of scientific and technological ideas and so miserable in gaining economic benefit from those ideas? The answer is not the lack of talent or ability of Russian engineers or scientists. Not at all. They're very good. The answer is the failure of Russia to develop a society in which the brilliance of its citizens can find fulfillment in economic development. All the leaders of Russia, from Tsarist times to the present, have believed that the answer to the problem of modernization is technology itself, rather than the social and economic environment which promotes the development and commercialization of technology. Ideas by themselves are not enough. The title of my book in English is Lonely Ideas. By lonely ideas, I mean ideas that don't get developed. And the Russians are very, very good at that. This Russian misunderstanding became graphically clear to me a few years ago when I traveled to Russia with top administrators of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. On that occasion, we met with Loren Graham. Not Mr. Graham himself, but many other Russians quizzed us on how they could match MIT in developing the next big thing. The MIT administrators tried to explain that their institution's success depended on the culture not only of MIT, but of the Boston area and the United States in general. What are these characteristics that are necessary in order for technological ideas to develop and become commercial successes? A democratic form of government, a free market economy with investors seeking new technology, protection of intellectual property, control over corruption and crime, a legal system in which the accused has a chance of being declared innocent, a culture that tolerates criticism and allows independence, a willingness to learn from failure in order to try again. These are some of the intangible characteristics of an innovative society. But the Russians we talked to, particularly in the institutes and universities, did not understand this point, and they kept asking about specific technologies, nanotechnologies, information technologies, 3D printing. They kept asking about specific technologies. And finally, an exasperated administrator of MIT, and he happens to be at the moment the president of MIT, Raphael Reif, turned to his Russian colleagues and said, You want the milk without the cow. At the present moment, the leaders of Russia are trying to modernize. But unfortunately, like their Tsarist and Soviet predecessors, they try to separate technology from socio-political systems. They say they support Skolkovo, the ambitious and expensive Silicon Valley project outside Moscow. But at the same time, and it's sad to say this, but I have to say it, at the same time, they prohibit demonstrations, they suppress political opponents and entrepreneurs who gain enough power that they might challenge them. They twist the legal system to serve their own ends. They sign laws that threaten Russians who work with foreigners with treason, and they create a regressive, authoritarian regime. Such policies do not lead to a society with risk-taking entrepreneurs and rebellious innovators. They lead to a society in which people keep their heads down in fear of attracting attention. To them, like past Soviet and Tsarist rulers, modernization, unfortunately, means getting their hands on new technologies, but rejecting the economic and political principles that push those technologies elsewhere to success. They want the milk without the cow. And so long as these policies remain in effect, the scientific genius of the Russian people, for which I have such respect, will remain economically unfulfilled.
Профессор, если разрешите.
Professor, if I may, I would like to ask a question, to confirm. Are you talking about the political regime, or are you talking about the quality of government performance? Because we know many examples from history, the examples of development of nations where regimes could be very different, but the nations became very innovative and they reached pole positions in the world's rankings of innovative states. Is it about the policy, or is it about the governance? Is it about the performance of government?
And be separated. I think that we are now in a modern world which is a little different from what happened in the 17th and 18th and 19th centuries. Those were countries where you might say progress occurred through capital accumulation. We're now living at a time where economies have become knowledge economies, where their strength derives from the creativity of their citizens, and those citizens need to be educated in such a way that they can create, and they need to find the conditions, political, economic, legal, educational, research, so that they can create. So we're in a different era now. It may be that in the past, Peter the Great could make a great advance forward, even though it was an autocratic regime. It doesn't work anymore.
Окей, спасибо.
All right.